and she will guide you through the museum. You also see Dr. Stefania Rossi, Head of Promotion and Communication at the Museo Poldi Pezzoli since 2005. And she promotes the activities and the mission of the museum. She follows and directs special initiatives, development, training, and accessibility. Dr. Rossi is also coordinator of the Milanese House Museum Network. And I'm turning it over to you, Dr. Rossi. Stefania.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Francesca, for the introduction. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to Poldi Pezzoli Museums. The museum is in the center of Milan, in the fashion district, and it is a beautiful house museum. Today, we will take you to an innovative tour to the house museum galleries. The new format has been designed by Invisible Studio, a cultural innovation studio. During these days, museums are closed, but we believe in the importance of art, and so we look for a good way to bring the museum to the people. In this way, we can reach people everywhere. This tour is possible with the collaboration of the group of the Young Friends of the Museums. The group helps me with the promotion and the communication of many museums activities. Let me introduce you to Bianca Munari, a young member of the group. I really hope that then you will enjoy the tour with Camila. Bianca, to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Bianca Munari, and I'm a team member of the Young Friends of the Poldi Pezzoli Museum. Our group was born in 2016 with the mission to make the museum young-friendly and attract young adults to the artistic and cultural scene of Milan in an involving way. During the past years, we offer different activities, all aiming at enhancing the cultural experience and knowledge of the Poldi Pezzoli museum. For example, with guided tours with different entertainments, such as tours with puzzle games, or tours with live music sessions, or tours with photographic activities. And we also organize different activities around the city in other art collections and for networking events. Following this vision, we decided to develop this new virtual tour to keep sharing this amazing cultural heritage that is in the collection of the museum. So I really would like to thank you all for being here today, and I wish you a pleasant visit with Camila.
So, I will turn my virtual background off because it's quite unpleasant. Okay, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Francesca, for the introduction. And let me start this virtual tour of the Poldi Pezzoli Museum. Okay, so welcome to the Poldi Pezzoli House Museum. This is a very special place in Milan, one of the stars of the city. And some people say that if you don't visit the museum, actually you can't understand deeply the story of Milan and the spirit of the city. This was the entrance to the private apartment of one of the greatest and finest Italian collectors of the 19th century. In fact, this is a house museum. There is one important difference with a normal museum. Gian Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli, the owner of this beautiful house and collection, did not collect art for the decoration of his home. He wanted the whole home itself to become a work of art. Also, he wanted his place to be a faithful mirror of the past. He lived in an age of industrial and technological innovation and great inventions, the 19th century. But he saw that the world around him was changing very fast. And somehow he decided also to try to save something of the past world that was somehow disappearing. Actually, he inhabited modernity, but he dreamt of the past. Gian Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli was born 1822, and he was the son of two important families. From his father's line, he was son of the Poldi and the Pezzoli, counts of the northern part of Italy, Parma, and so on. And from his mother's line, he was inheriting the tradition of the Trivulzio family, which was one of the most important and antique noble families of Milanese origin. This gave him two opportunities. On one side, richness, and on the other side, a deep sense of culture and a taste for collection and for the antique. He designed his house to become his monument, and in this way, this place became one of the finest house museums in the whole Europe. So this is the staircase from which you get from the ground floor to the first floor. And this was the entrance to the palace. Poldi Pezzoli lived upstairs. So we have to imagine that the rooftop was not like the one we see here. Because a very fine stained glass dome with flowers and angels covered the space. We can imagine the sunlight getting colored and being reflected by the water surface of the neo-Baroque fountain in the middle. Everything was destroyed during the bombings of 1943. And here we have a picture representing how the museum staircase space looked after those terrible and strong bombs. This is a picture of Gian Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli, a very fine painting by Francesco Hayez, who was a very important contemporary painter. He was contemporary to Poldi Pezzoli, and it is in the entrance. So we will turn our shoulders and we will go straight ahead to the armory.
The armory.
Oh, yes. Okay, so can you hear me?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you, because I noticed that someone was saying it is not, the audio is not so good. Okay, so now we are in the armory, because the original armory was arranged in a neo-Gothical style, but it was completely destroyed with the bombings. So this is a completely new space. Actually, why I'm here, because arm and armors were the first passion of the young collector. During the 16th century, Milan was one of the most important cities of silversmiths and armor makers. And even the Emperor Charles V came to Milan to buy some of his finest armor suits. In Poldi Pezzoli's collection, we have some important parrot suits made by the most important artists in this field, such as Piero della Francesca and Filippo Negroli. Some important armors by Filippo Negroli are shown in the Metropolitan Museum. We have helmets, bucklers, maces, and also some Islamic arms and armors. Since the year 2000, the collection is shown in this space, created by the famous Milanese contemporary artist Arnaldo Pomodoro, who was a bronze sculptor and also a scenographer. And the museum asked the artist to build the perfect scenography for a collection of beautiful antique and ancient armors, and this is the astonishing result. On the rooftop, on the ceiling, sorry, you have this beautiful artwork, which is called The Battle, La Battaglia. Okay, now let's go to the first floor.
Camila, as you go upstairs, we have a question. How was the collection rebuilt? From Gabriela.
The collection was never rebuilt. I wonder if you have seen the movie Monuments Man. In this beautiful movie, you see how soldiers, but not only, saved the artistic heritage during World War II. The same thing happened in Milan. We had our own Monuments Man, and actually all the collections were brought to the mountains or under the castles or away during the war to protect them. And then after the war, they brought everything back. So there were inventories, there were pictures, and the population and the director of the museum, they already knew how this collection was set up. Was it, I'm answering the right question?
Yes, that was.
Thanks.
Thank you, Camila.
Okay.
And as we proceed upstairs, someone is asking for the pronunciation of Pezzoli. So it's Gian Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli. Okay. Go upstairs.
Okay, so let's move upstairs. Let's pretend we have finished our staircase without any kind of fatigue, fortunately. And we will proceed directly straight ahead to the main room of the collection. So we will jump this little room and we will go to the golden room. Okay. So we are on the first floor, which is the floor that where Gian Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli actually lived in. Today the museum has 30 rooms in general. We will not see all the rooms, of course, but we will take a glance at the most important ones and the most representative ones. Some of those rooms are modern, while the so-called historical rooms still keep and show the 19th century atmosphere. The Golden Room was originally designed to display some of the best artworks of Poldi Pezzoli's collection. And now it hosts the best masterpieces of painting. The name Golden Room comes from the fact that before the bombings of World War II, it was covered by a gilded wooden ceiling. This is a picture of the room before World War II. And of course, everything was brought away, but the decoration, the original decoration, was damaged and burned, and so it could not be reconstructed, of course, because otherwise they would have created a fake. This room also hosts the portrait of a lady, which is the main, sorry, I have to, sorry, I'm having some troubles figuring out.
We're trying to zoom on the painting.
Okay, I know how to do it. Okay, here, sorry. Okay, so this is the portrait of a lady, which is one of the best known portraits of Renaissance Italy, the most beautiful female portrait of the Renaissance, and also the symbol of the museum. You can see on the bottom right part of your screen. The picture represents a young lady in profile, set against a light blue sky. The woman wears a very precious gown. A green silk low bodice is worn over a light white silk shirt appearing underneath. Okay, so here you can see the shirt appearing under the bodice. The extremely rich sleeve is made of velvet brocade embroidered with pressure metal thread, probably silver or gold thread. The mass of her hair is held by silk ribbons, the blue ones. A fine veil is attached to the ears, and some fine golden pins hold some rebel hair right here. Okay, this is a golden pin, very thin one. Consider that Google allows us to zoom in because the images has a very high quality. And this is something that we cannot do in the museum, even if the relationship with an artwork should always be direct and it's more has more sense. However, today we will have to get happy with this. The blonde hair was considered a sign of purity, and the lady shows the damages of hair dyeing treatments. You can see here that the final part of the hair is very damaged. Actually, we know that the ladies in that time, which is Renaissance Italy, used to apply a very bad treatments to their hair to make them blonde. And this is a thing that happens still today. So nothing changed from this point of view. There are 3 rows of pearls decorating the neck and the head of the lady. The one enriching her neck shows a pendant with a big uncut ruby. Pearls and rubies were symbols of purity and charity and were very common wedding gifts. We don't know actually who this lady was. We have some clues, but we don't know it with certitude. But the extremely precious outfit, of course, suggests that she must have been a prominent member of the Florentine aristocracy. The painter of this beautiful portrait was Piero del Pollaiolo, a Florentine painter who shared a workshop close to the Uffizi Gallery with his brother Antonio, who was a famous silversmith and jewelry maker. This picture, dating from around 1470, shows great care in rendering the details and the effect of light, which are a clear influence of Flemish painters on Italian art. This kind of portraits, showing rich ladies that never meet the eye of the observer, are typical marriage portraits of the Florentine culture. Since women did not possess jewels or clothes, everything that they were wearing belonged first to the father and then to the husband. But jewels were not the only expensive part of a woman's outfit. Sleeves were very expensive, and they were so expensive that they were listed in the inventories of the families and considered actually like jewels. There is another important point on sleeves. Actually, they were detachable, so they could be joined to the bodies with ribbons or with fine cords. They could be therefore separated from the gown, and that's where the Italian expression "è tutto un altro paio di maniche" comes from. One could combine a bodice with different pairs of sleeves. And in Italian, we still use this expression today when we want to underline that one thing does not belong, has nothing to do with another thing, okay? So the two things do not belong. In the past, the outfit of ladies especially were regulated by special laws called sumptuary laws. These laws were made to regulate luxury and extravagance, and therefore to reinforce social hierarchies, so as to let people easily identify social rank and privilege. In Florence, the famous 1415 laws restricted the luxury that could be worn by women, but one could pay a tax and be free from that law. For example, married women could not wear jewels. They could wear marriage jewels only for 6 months after marriage. Then, since those women were to be clearly considered out of the market, they couldn't wear jewels anymore, or, of course, low necklines, for example. Also, buttons underwent sumptuary laws. Finally, this portrait maybe represents the woman just before her marriage or immediately after.
Camila, we have a question from David Flexman. If you could please go over again what made the sleeves so valuable.
Okay, so these sleeves were made with very expensive materials such as silk velvet and precious metal thread embroidery. And actually the technique and the time and the material to make all these beautiful sleeves were expensive at first, and then the manufacturing. Some scholars say that the sleeves were one of the most important parts of the gown, the whole outfit, because they were clearly seen during the dances. If you have in mind popular Renaissance dances, maybe you have seen it in some movies, you notice that the arm of the dancers were lifted, and so it was the most visible part of the gown. Then it has, I mean, for example, today we have the same aspect in the bags. If a woman wears and carries a very beautiful and expensive bag, this item itself is a symbol of the whole richness of this person.
Thank you, Camila.
It's me.
Do we have 1 minute for another question? You tell me. Of course. Too much, otherwise
you manage my time as well, so tell me. It's you. Okay, let's try another question.
So Beverly is asking, if a tax were paid, could a woman or a man continue to wear jewels in public? How much was the tax?
I don't know exactly how much was the tax. It was quite high, because in this way, in this way, they were sure that only very rich people could wear what was forbidden for everyone else. So yes, it could be possible to pay a tax and get the right to wear jewels. Probably there was, you could buy with the tax 6 months further or something like this. But you had to figure out that probably the judgment of the society would have been maybe not that good. So you had to balance your decision.
Thank you, Camila.
Okay, so let's move to another beautiful painting. Okay, so this is a small painting by Sandro Botticelli, one of the most important and famous painters of the whole Florentine Renaissance. You know for sure the Birth of Venus by Sandro Botticelli, now in Florence in the Uffizi Gallery. This is a very soft and elegant work. Mary and Jesus Child are sitting by a window in a corner of a domestic space. The Virgin is reading a book, maybe a book of prayers, and the baby is looking at his mother like if he wants to ask her something, maybe something about the future. Behind them, a window is open on the landscape. Very beautiful landscape over there, very light blue sky, very elegant. But the light that transformed the domestic space in a spiritual scene seems to come directly from the figures themselves. On the left, a symbolic bowl of fruits, a maiolica bowl, very beautiful, and some books also, and a box with threads and needles probably. The cherries in the bowl represents the blood of Christ. The plums instead symbolize the tenderness, the sweetness of maternal love, and the figs allude to the resurrection. The beautiful color, that beautiful blue of the Virgin's robe is made in lapis lazuli, which was the most expensive color ever, even more expensive than gold. And why then? Because it was made with the powder of lapis lazuli, a semi-precious stone that had to be found in Afghanistan. So you can imagine how hard it was to carve those stones out and then to bring them to Europe without risks. It was almost impossible. That's why they were so expensive. The fact that Botticelli uses this color and uses a large quantity, look how much blue there is in this painting, means that the original patron was a very prestigious person. Unfortunately, we don't know who he was. Dating from about 1480, this painting by Botticelli shows the elements of his delicate style. It is a wonderful harmony of pink and blue, and we can appreciate some very beautiful details, such as the transparent veil of the Virgin, look how fine it is, also here on the neck, and the beautiful still life we saw before on the left side of the painting. Gian Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli began to collect 15th century paintings when all the contemporary collectors looked for Baroque 18th century landscapes. Milan was the center of the art market, and that's how, since he knew the best art dealers in town, he could buy not only one painting by Botticelli, but two. Today, it's very difficult to buy a painting by Botticelli. It's very expensive. So this is the second painting by Botticelli that we have in Poldi Pezzoli's collection. and it represents the Lamentation over the Dead Christ. This is another masterpiece. It's dramatic, it's theatrical, and it's a very intense composition. At the center, we have the dead Christ laying on the legs of the Virgin here, and the Virgin here with the pink gown is fainting for her sorrow. The Magdalene on the left in red is holding Christ's feet, and on the top in yellow, Saint Joseph of Arimathea lifts the symbols of the Passion. The strained expressions, the use of primary colors, give even more intensity to this painting. Also, you can figure out the composition. It's a triangle, but you can also see the line of a cross here, the horizontal line here, and a vertical line here. We can compare this painting to the other one we saw a couple of minutes ago, and we perceive a big difference. This is due to the fact that this painting, the Lamentation, was conceived after the death of Lawrence the Magnificent, who was the main patron and a personal friend of Botticelli. After the death of Lorenzo il Magnifico, 1492, the death of Lorenzo il Magnifico was followed by a very dark moment for the city of Florence, when the Dominican priest Girolamo Savonarola ruled the city for a couple of years, preaching and forecasting terrible events for the city of Florence. Also, this was the last painting bought by Poldi Pezzoli before his death. Okay, so there are other beautiful paintings by Giovanni Bellini. We have two paintings by Mantegna, Girolamo Montagna, etc. But maybe we move on and we go to another room, which is the dark room, La Sala Nera, right here. Okay. So, this room, before the bombings, was completely covered with a beautiful decoration in dark wood. And this is a picture for you. This was intended to give the idea of a typical Renaissance room and was inspired by one Flemish painting, which is this one on the left. On the corner, we see a beautiful marble sculpture. This one here. And let me, okay, this is better. This beautiful marble sculpture was commissioned by Rosa Trivulzio. Rosa Trivulzio was Gian Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli's mother. So she was a member of this noble family, Milanese noble family, and she was the person who somehow transmitted the culture of collection and of arts and of patronage to Gian Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli. She was in fact a friend of many contemporary artists and poets, and in 1833 she lost her husband, Gian Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli's father, and she, on these occasions, she asked to her friend Lorenzo Bartolini, a Tuscan sculptor, to make for her a sculpture that could help her feel a little bit better. So Bartolini, who was the director of the Academy in Florence, got to the representation of an abstract concept, an idea, in Carrara, transformed in Carrara marble. This is the trust in God. The trust in God is represented by this naked young lady with clasped hands in prayer and looking upwards in an expression of devotion. This exquisite sculpture enjoyed great success while being exhibited in some of the most important art shows at the time. Do we have questions, Claudia?
So yes. We have a question. Would you please tell me a bit more about the artist and what other works he produced in the Renaissance and who his contemporaries were? I think this was a bag for Pollaiolo.
Oh, okay. So who this artist was? Maybe, I mean, could you please remind me this question at the end of the tour so we make a focus back on Pollaiolo's work, and maybe in this moment we move forward? What do you think?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, but please remind me this question. Okay. It's just because I would like to go back to the picture, and otherwise it would be a little bit complicated for you. So now we moved forward and we entered the Murano glass room. On the left side, you see a collection of important 16 and 17 Murano transparent glass cups and plates. But this was the bedroom of Gian Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli. So this is a painting by Luigi Bisi representing the room how it was before World War II. Inside there was this massive wooden bed carved by Giuseppe Ripamonti that was unfortunately lost during the war because it was too big and too heavy to be carried out, basically. Okay, here you have right there a portrait of Rosa Trivulzio, Gian Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli's mother, as a widow with a black veil over her head. But we will take a glance to one of these beautiful self-portrait by Francesco Hayez, who was the painter of the portrait of Poldi Pezzoli we saw at the beginning. Okay. So Francesco Hayez was born in Venice, but he worked a lot in Milan, and he became the director of the Academy, of the Brera Academy in Milan. And this self-portrait in a group of friends depicts the painter in central position with two other painters on the left, Giovanni Migliara and Pelagio Palagi. And on the right, we have another important painter, Giuseppe Molteni, the one with the hat, and Tommaso Grossi, who was a poet. Giuseppe Molteni was also a friend and a collaborator of Gian Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli. He was a restorer and he worked a lot for Poldi Pezzoli's collection. It is an intriguing painting. It's unfinished, as you can see from the brush strokes over here on the left. And there is maybe a bit of irony coming out from this beautiful picture. There is a poem by Tommaso Grossi entitled The Toast, Il Brindisi, that is considered the equivalent for this picture. And since this poem was written by Tommaso Grossi when he recovered from a long illness, maybe the toast, the brindisi, was made for celebrate this event, this beautiful moment, and the picture was like a picture, I mean, a photograph to remember this beautiful moment. Okay, so we will proceed to another room, which is dedicated to the Venetian painters of the 18th century. There is a beautiful collection of sketches by Giovan Battista Tiepolo. You have some beautiful paintings in Washington by Tiepolo as well, as far as I know, and Botticelli, of course, as well. And a nice pastel by Rosalba Carriera, a female painter who worked a lot for Marie Antoinette during the 18th century, and a series of landscapes by Canaletto, Bellotto, and Guardi, who are the three famous painters in Venice. Okay, but here on the sawhorse, we have this little painting, which is probably the most interesting in this room. Okay. It's a painting by Francesco Guardi, and it is known as the Grey Lagoon. It's dating from about 1765, more or less, and probably it's a part of a larger painting. It represents a view of Venice, I mean of Venice Lagoon, but it's very far from the noisy and confusing typical representation of the city of Carnival. Here we have a suspended atmosphere where the blue-gray sea and the sky almost melt together. They are separated by this light line of buildings on the horizon, which probably represents the city of Murano, famous for the transparent glass production. It's just a gondola on the foreground, this tiny ship that tells us that we are in Venice. Otherwise, I wonder how many of you have been to Venice and have souvenir of such silence, a bit of sadness, humidity, and melancholy probably as well. In this tiny painting, we can find also the roots of the great landscape painting of the Impressionism of the 19th century. So we cannot say this painting is an Impressionist painting, but something can recall us the beautiful French painters of the Impressionism. So let's take a step back and let's enter the most special place in the museum. This was the studio of Gian Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli, and by now it is the only remaining example of the original 19th century decoration of the house. The room is decorated as a medieval church with frescoes and two beautiful stained glass windows. In the center of the left, let's take a tour so you can take a glance at this very rich decoration. This is the only space that survived World War II. It's a little bit a miracle. It was restored year 2002, but the restoration only fixed up some tiny holes. Okay. So let me show here. Okay, so this is a larger picture of the stained glass window I can zoom into. In the center of this beautiful artwork, we have the figure of Dante Alighieri, the most important poet in Italian literature. Why Dante Alighieri has such an importance for Gian Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli? Because he was, during the 19th century, he was considered the father of Italian language, of course, and was an important point and character for those who wanted the unification of Italy, because you know that Italy does not exist as a country until 1862. And to fight, Gian Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli as well wanted Italy to be a country, to become a country. And that's why in 1848, when in Milan there was kind of a revolution against the Austrian government who was ruling the city, he somehow endorsed this rebellion, and he was fined and exiled for this reason. He toured a little bit Europe. He went to Geneva, he went to London, he went to Paris, and that's where he understood what could become his collection. So before starting to collect the paintings and works of art, he was, before the painting, he was collecting just arms and armors. And after this trip, this exile, this trip through Europe, he began to acquire paintings and artworks. So this was very important for him, even if it was a very sad experience. So as Poldi Pezzoli was exiled from Milan, and Dante was exiled as well, Poldi Pezzoli felt kind of a connection with this person. Also, Gian Giacomo Trivulzio, the grandfather of Poldi Pezzoli, was an outstanding Dante scholar. So there was a culture of Dante in the family of the young Poldi Pezzoli. So here in the middle you have Dante, and on the left side you have Matilda, which is a woman she meets at the end of the Purgatory, and she is kind of a guide because she gives Dante some useful information about the place where she is, which is this marvelous garden. And then on the right you have, of course, the beautiful Beatrice, and behind Beatrice maybe some of you can recognize the bell tower of Florence Cathedral. Underneath you have this beautiful logo of Dante, the names of Matilda and Beatrice, and on the top you have the Virgin and some decorations inspired on the illustration of Gustave Doré he made for a beautiful edition of the Divine Comedy. This stained glass window was made by Giuseppe Bertini, who was a painter and artist, friend of Poldi Pezzoli. He also had conceived the whole decoration of the Studiolo Dantesco, the space where we are now. And it was made 1851, and Giuseppe Bertini, after the death of Poldi Pezzoli, became the director of the foundation, because Poldi Pezzoli, who in this space used to receive his art dealers and friends and artists, died here. But before dying, he made a will where he wrote that he would have loved that his whole house and the collection would be open to the public with the same rules of the main museum in the city of Milan, which is the Accademia di Brera, the Pinacoteca di Brera. So was the fireplace, a fake fireplace actually. And on the top of the decoration, we have a scene that represents a well-known scene of the Divine Comedy. But let me introduce you now to Luca, a young student of Italian literature and philology. He is very passionate about Dante, and he will read for us a short extract from the Divine Comedy in Italian. He will also make a short introduction on the context and the story.
Thank you, Camila. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. For me, I love Dante. In my opinion, is one of the most important poets in Italy and probably in the world, in the entire world. And I will read now a small passage from his extraordinary poem, De Divina Commedia. Dante is walking around through the Inferno. In this canto, he meets sinners of love. Two lovers, Paolo and Francesca, come to him. Before death, Francesca was married with Paolo's brothers, Gianciotto, but time after time, Paolo conquered her heart. They were reading a love story on a book when Gianciotto discovered them. He was very unhappy, and at the end, he killed the two young lovers. Oh animal grazioso e benigno, che visitando vai per l'aer perso noi, che tignemmo il mondo di sanguigno, se fosse amico il re dell'universo, noi pregheremmo lui della tua pace, poiché hai pietà del nostro mal perverso. Di quel che udire e che parlar vi piace, noi udiremo e parleremo a voi, mentre che il vento, come fa, ci tace. Siede la terra dove nata fui, sulla marina dove il po' discende, per aver pace coi seguaci sui. Amor, ch'al cor gentil ratto s'apprende, prese costui della bella persona che mi fu tolta, e il modo ancor m'offende. Amor, ch'a nullo amato amar perdona, mi prese del costui piacer sì forte che, come vedi, ancor non m'abbandona. Amor condusse noi a una morte, Caina attende, chi a vita ci spense. Queste parole da lor ci fuor porte.
Thank you, Luca. I hope you enjoyed this Italian reading. And so if Claudia agrees, I would go back to our symbol, the symbol of the museum, to answer that question. Would you be
sure. Do you want me
so
to
kind? Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Of course. So it's Nan Lower, and he asks, would you please tell me a bit more about the artist and what other works he produced in the Renaissance and who his contemporaries were?
Okay, so Pollaiolo was the son of a meat seller, of a butcher, but he was trained in the workshop of a jeweler, a silversmith and a goldsmith in Florence. He worked together with his brother, Antonio del Pollaiolo. And for example, Antonio del Pollaiolo made that splendid silver altar cross that you can see in the Museum of the Cathedral in Florence. Piero del Pollaiolo instead was mainly a painter. There is the possibility that they worked also together. This is still a question for scholars. But if you look here, you can see this beautiful outline that it's very similar to the outlines used in silver and enameling for outlining actually the figures and the images in it. He lived and worked in the second half of the 15th century, and his contemporaries were Botticelli, for example, Piero della Francesca as well, Andrea del Castagno, and so this, yeah, I wonder which other famous painters there were at the time. Yeah, this was more or less the context. He worked mainly in Florence and in the surroundings, and he is well known for a series of 4 portraits. One is in the Metropolitan Museum in New York, one is in Florence, and one is in Berlin. And these 4 portraits depict ladies with jewels and beautiful gowns, exactly like this, and make a beautiful series. So the influence, the style of Piero del Pollaiolo shows an intense influence of the Flemish painters, because the Medici family ruling the city of Florence during the 15th century, they had a bank, and they had the bank also in the Flanders, and this is why there was an intense exchange of paintings between Florence and the Flanders. In the Uffizi Gallery, in the same room where you have the 2 Botticelli paintings, you have this enormous and splendid altarpiece by Hugo van der Goes, which is the Portinari altarpiece. And it is well recorded in the chronicles of the era that this Flemish painting made a lot of influence, was very important for the Florentine painters, because Flemish painters used another technique and another way of representing details and realities. They imported somehow the oil technique, while in Florence they used the tempera mainly. So there is this phase of Florentine painting, the second half of the 15th century, where both techniques, the oil and the tempera, are used together and mixed by painters with very strange and surprising results.
So Camila, we have Jessie Hellman that would like to add that there is a very similar Pollaiolo portrait in a museum in Berlin. I cannot attach it, but it almost looks like the same young woman with extravagant sleeves.
Yes, it is exactly that one. Maybe I can...
So it is from Pollaiolo as well, the one in Berlin?
Yes, it is. This one. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah, it is an awful picture because the painting is much more beautiful, but this is the painting. And here you have this quite the same situation. You have a different kind of gown, different shape, but you also have these rich sleeves, and you have no jewels, but you have a very complicated hairstyle. And all these reasons let scholars hypothesize that this is an earlier painting, so dating to the 50s, if I am not wrong. But good question, good good thing. Good memory as well.
Camilla, sulle sale, about the rooms, I saw the beautiful stained glass wall. Looks authentic, right? Wasn't bombarded, or it's authentic, it's original.
Yes, it is authentic. Probably it was protected by sandbags, and this is how everything was preserved.
And other rooms are completely intact, original?
No, this is the only one. Actually, this is really the only one, which makes this place so special, because it's the only room that was completely preserved. All the other rooms have been destroyed and more or less reconstructed, but everything has gone. Everything but the collection, of course, all the decoration of the room.
Yeah.
And Camila, earlier when we were looking at the lagoon painting, Beverly asked, were there other painters at the time who painted outside? Because we were speaking about Impressionism. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, the three, let me go back. Yes, to the lagoon. So we have mainly three important painters, contemporary. I mean, all of the three work in the same period, which are Canaletto, the famous landscaper painting and Venetian painter, Francesco Guardi, which is the author of this lagoon, and Bellotto, which is the third one. All of the three are represented in a collection of Gian Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli. I don't know if we can see something else. No, not here.
Yeah, and this painting already has reminds a lot of Impression de Monet, no? With the l'alba.
Yeah, 1 century earlier.
Yeah.
Which is quite astonishing because
Monet was inspired by this.
Yeah, well, they work in a very different way because Canaletto, for example, we know that he had, how should I explain this? He had built kind of a room in wood that would be moved outside. So when he went, for example, in the squares of Venice in Piazza San Marco, he entered this cabin, this wooden cabin with a special instrument, and he drew on a piece of paper what a primitive optical camera put on his piece of paper. So he did not paint directly from the reality, but he had this instrument that could transport reality into dimensions on a piece of paper. Then afterwards, in his studio, he would transform this drawing in a painting. It's very complicated to explain, but it's very easy if one has in mind this kind of wooden instrument.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? I actually have another question. If since there was this interest for Dante and the room dedicated to Dante, is there also a collection of books, antique books, or?
Yes, the Poldi Pezzoli has a very beautiful collection of antique manuscripts and books, editions of the 16th century, one of among the first editions by Aldo Manuzio, but also has 4 editions of the Divine Comedy by Dante. I think 2 of them are from the 15th century, so very rare. And they are still in the collection of Poldi Pezzoli. They are not on show because you know that paper is very delicate. So in Italy, for example, I mean, there is an international consideration that paper should not be exposed for more than 3 months. And then it should be kept in the darkness for the following 3 or 5 years. That's why in the art shows you have so little number of drawings and books, because this is very difficult to manage and you need a very dark setting to show this kind of delicate items. But yes, Poldi Pezzoli has had in his collection this series of 4 editions coming from Gian Giacomo Trivulzio's collection.
Thank you.
Camila, talk about the exhibition of the 4 ladies of Pollaiolo.
Okay. In 2015, if my memory doesn't betray me,
yes, it's correct.
Okay, yeah, November 14 and February 2015. We, in the museum, we hosted a very important exhibition. I have actually the catalog right here. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So, and it, where in the exhibition, they were the 4 ladies by Pollaiolo and other, we had, I think, 30 works coming from all around the world. Florence, Berlin, United States, France, etc. And it was very important because for the first time ever, we reunited the 4 portrait ladies by Pollaiolo. And on this occasion, some restorations were made, some technical studies were made, and some archive research as well. And a little step back on the provenance of this painting was made thanks to the research for this exhibition. Also, the relationship between Pollaiolo, the drawing, the sculpture, and the context of Florence was deeply studied and showed in this exhibition. This exhibition was probably the most successful one for the museum in its whole history.
Thank you, Camila. We have another question from Anne. How many exhibit rooms are in the Poldi Pezzoli Museum? Do some have furniture as well as artwork?
Okay, so I think that the number is around 27 rooms. We have recently added 3 rooms thanks to a donation. And the second part of the question was about furniture. Yes, we have furniture. The furniture is not the main part of the collection, as you can see, but we have, for example, this beautiful Veronese cassone, okay, which is an original one from the first half of the 16th century, and which was made in Verona and is decorated with beautiful scenes of ancient stories of marriage. We also have 2 cabinets made in Naples. Let me see if I can show this to you. We also have, for example, here, this beautiful, in Italian we call it the mobile a bambocci, which would be the cabinet with babies, which is the typical Baroque kind of furniture made in Genoa mainly. But we also have 2 beautiful cabinets I cannot find right now. Here. Sorry. Here. Ivory with the beautiful maps of the city, of the whole possession of the Spanish kingdom. It's a pair of cabinets, very, very interesting, very beautiful, but here in the reproduction by Google is not very well appreciated.
So Camila, during the war, you said that all the art collection and some of the furniture were taken away in order to be saved. So these 2 cabinets and what you just showed us, that was the only furniture items that were saved and taken out?
Yes, we also have a couple of cupboards in Gian Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli's room, but as far as I know, yes, one here and one here. But yes, actually, I don't know if you can see, yeah, the pictures. For example, we have one showcase. This was a showcase for goldsmithery and artwork, precious artworks, that it's still visible in Poldi Pezzoli's room, exactly this one. Maybe there are a couple of other ones in the storage, but I mean, also here, the chairs, for example, are still preserved, but also here you can see that we had not that large number of cupboards and other furniture elements. I was talking about original, I mean, antique furniture, because all the chairs here are 19th century. So from an European perspective, it's not so antique.
Thank you. We also have another question. First of all, Alison says, mi piace molto la sua passione, grazie mille.
Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Alison. Gabriela is asking, the manuscripts came from Gian Giacomo Trivulzio's collection. Did Poldi Pezzoli buy them from him? Did he buy some of the armor from him as well, since Trivulzio was a military man?
He was his grandfather, so I wonder why should he buy items from his collection. We know that Poldi Pezzoli bought a lot of arms and armors, but not coming from Gian Giacomo Trivulzio collection. They were on the art market or belonging to other collectors or noble families. Maybe we are talking about Gian Giacomo Trivulzio, the man of the 16th century, because there was a Gian Giacomo Trivulzio in the 16th century, and there I cannot answer the question because I don't know. I'm very sorry.
Gabriela actually says, I did not realize that he was his grandfather.
Okay, I'm sorry, maybe I was going too fast. So yes, the collection of manuscripts comes mainly to Poldi Pezzoli from his family. As far as I know, he did not buy manuscripts, or I mean, an important part of his collection of manuscripts is not coming from the art market, but he just kept what came from his family's heritage.
Thank you, Camila. I think that we don't have any more questions, unless anybody has more questions.
No?
No?
Well, in the meantime, I would like to thank you, everybody, for this beautiful opportunity. I thank you for all your questions, and I really hope that someday in the nearest future, you will come to Milan and appreciate the Poldi Pezzoli Museum directly in person, because the relationship with spaces and lights and materials, of course, it cannot be the same with a virtual tour.
Thank you, Camila. We're receiving a lot of comments in the chat, a lot of people that are thanking you so much for your presentation. So thank you.
It's me. Thank you. I was very happy to do this for you.
Thank you, Camila.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Stefania. Thank you, Camilla. Thank you, everybody, for participating to this meeting. I want to remind that on our website, on the page of social meeting, there is also a link to the Museo Poldi Pezzoli for whoever desires to donate and support the Museo Poldi Pezzoli. We would appreciate it very much. We will also donate to the Museo Poldi Pezzoli, of course. And of course, we look forward to participate, to come in person to visit and be there. And so in the meantime, I hope that everybody enjoyed art, because we do need art these days to cheer up our spirits, as well as we need poetry. And that's why as the final gift for our usual event, we end either with an opera or with some music. And today I selected for you a poem in Italian by Marianne Gualtieri, and the title is Io ringraziare desidero. It's in Italian, and I hope that many of you can understand it and enjoy it as much as I did. And so while Claudia prepares it, I just wanted to mention our next event. So our next event in June will be the presentation of Sarah Forden's book. So we'll still be in Milano, but this time we'll talk about fashion. So the book is The House of Gucci, a sensational story of murder, madness, glamour, and greed. And this book will become a movie directed by Ridley Scott with Lady Gaga in the main role of Maurizio Gucci's wife. So don't miss the opportunity. Well, can we see it? I'm not sure with my background. It's not possible to see the book. But anyway, The House of Gucci, Sarah Gay Forden. This will be our next event. So for whoever wants to start to read and have questions, I'll start to read it tonight. And so thank you again, Camila. Thank you, Stefania, and Luca for the beautiful verses from Dante, for the father of poetry and the Italian language. So thank you, Luca. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And ciao, and hope to see you in Milano. Thank you, everybody, and happy Mother's Day again for all the moms connected.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Ciao a tutti.
In quest'ora della sera, da questo punto del mondo, io desidero il divino labirinto delle cause e degli effetti, per la diversità delle creature che popolano questo universo singolare. Ringraziare il desidero per l'amore, che ci fa vedere gli altri come li vede la divinità. Per il pane e il sale, per il mistero della rosa. Tesoro. Per il mistero della rosa che prodiga colore e non lo vede. Per l'arte dell'amicizia. Per l'ultima giornata di Socrate. Per il linguaggio che può simulare la sapienza. Io ringraziare il desidero per il coraggio e la felicità degli altri. Per la patria sentita nei gelsomini. Per lo splendore del fuoco, che nessun umano può guardare senza uno stupore antico. E per il mare, che è il più vicino e il più dolce tra tutti gli dei. E io ringraziare il desidero perché sono tornate le lucciole. E per noi, per quando siamo ardenti, leggeri, per quando siamo allegri e grati. Per la bellezza delle parole, natura di Dio. Per la lettura, la scrittura, che ci fanno esplorare noi stessi e il mondo. Per la quiete della casa. Per i bambini, che sono nostre divinità domestiche. Per l'anima, perché se scende dal suo gradino, la terra muore. Per il fatto di avere una sorella. E io ringraziare il desidero per tutti quelli che sono piccoli, limpidi e liberi. Per l'antica arte del teatro, quando ancora raduna i vivi e li nutre. Per l'intelligenza d'amore, per il vino e il suo colore, per l'ozio con la sua attesa di niente, per la bellezza tanto antica e tanto nuova. E io ringraziare il desidero per le facce degli altri, le facce del mondo che sono varie e alcune sono adorabili. Per quando la notte si dorme abbracciati, per quando siamo attenti, innamorati. Per l'attenzione che è la preghiera spontanea dell'anima. Per i nostri maestri immensi, per chi nei secoli ha ragionato in noi. per tutte le biblioteche del mondo, per quello stare bene fra altri che leggono, e ancora per il bene dell'amicizia, quando si dicono cose stupide e care, per tutti i baci, per l'amore che ci rende impavidi, per la contentezza, l'entusiasmo, l'ebbrezza, per i nostri morti, che fanno della morte un luogo abitato. Io ringraziare desidero perché su questa terra esiste la musica. Per la mano destra, la mano sinistra, il loro intimo accordo, per chi è indifferente alla notorietà, per i gatti, per i cani, esseri fraterni carichi di mistero, per i fiori e la segreta vittoria che celebrano, per il silenzio e i suoi molti doni, per il silenzio e il suo oro, per il sole nostro antenato. Ringraziare desidero per Borges, per Whitman, per Hopkins, per Herbert, per Francesco d'Assisi, perché scrissero già questa poesia, per il fatto che questa poesia è inesauribile e cambia secondo gli uomini e non arriverà mai all'ultimo verso. Ringraziare desidero per i minuti che precedono il sonno, per gli intimi doni che non enumero, per il sonno e la morte, questi due tesori occulti. E infine ringraziare desidero per la gran potenza d'antico amor, per amor che muove il sole e le altre stelle e muove tutto in noi.